It is Wednesday, and I just got back from Mass. And it was the first time I ever went to Mass on a Wednesday, especially in the morning. Usually I like to go to the night Mass. And, when I got there, there was probably like 7 to 8 people there, other people there. So it was pretty small comparative to like a Sunday Mass. And it was good. I really liked it actually because it was a lot more intimate, it felt. When you're at a Sunday Mass, it's usually pretty filled up. And so you just kind of feel like one of many. Whereas with Mass today, you kind of felt like you were more prominent within the crowd. And I think, regardless of that, the point of Mass is really to go and to align yourself with God. And not only that, there's so many like amazing communal aspects to going to Mass and just a part of the Catholic Church in general, um, that I'm really considering like going to Mass as much as I can. Because one, I always feel better after I go to Mass. There's this renewal. There's this really deep sense of renewal that you experience when you go to a Mass. Even if you're like outside of the church and you don't even like participate in the Eucharist, you go there and afterwards you feel better. And it's the same thing with confession. You don't really want to do it. Um, you might feel obligated to do it. You might feel like it's something you have to check off your list. But every time you go into that confessional, afterwards you feel better. And like, what else is like that in our world today? You spend 3 hours on your phone after doom scrolling and you feel horrible. You feel this sense of shame and guilt for having like wasted so much time. But with a lot of these sacraments within the church, it's completely different. And it's strange because it's not like when you're participating in these things that you feel this like, oh, like this amazing excitement. Sometimes you might feel really connected to God when you go to church or when you're going to confession, but other times it might just feel extremely dry. And, while you're going throughout the Mass, for example, let's say, like, it just feels like you're kind of going through the motions and, you know, there to participate. And yet at the end, you feel better. It's like going to the gym. It's like going to the gym because when you go to the gym, you might not always feel good. Even throughout your workout, you may not feel good. Sometimes you might. Sometimes you might get that like workout high, so to speak, where you get flooded with all these chemicals and feel a lot better. Um, but sometimes you just feel super dry and you just kind of have to go through the motions and get through the workout. But once you get to the end of the workout, you feel so much better. Not only do you feel better from the action itself of working out or of going to Mass, but at the end, there's something that happens to you. There's this, when you're working out, there's this physical fortification that happens that when you use your body and when you challenge your body and when you go against the urge to not work out. So there's this actual physical transformation that happens, but then there's also this sense of accomplishment that you get at the end. It's like, oh man, like I really could have skipped this workout today, but I kind of just I persevered. And it feels good to persevere. It feels good to do things when you don't want to do them. And oftentimes those are the times that we most need to do them. And so today I'm like heavily reminded of that because, especially in the winters in Wisconsin, and, around the world, if you can resonate with the winter and the cold months. It's really difficult to get through those months if you don't have something that you're like really emphatic about doing, like such as like snowmobiling, snowboarding, skiing, or having some type of other activity that you do outside. Like I'm not super interested in those things. And so, once we get into these really cold months, it's like, man, it's really challenging because it gets dark at 5 o'clock at night. And, it's a subtle reminder of the fragility of the world. It really is. Because you realize not everything is sunshine and summer, where, the weather is beautiful and you can step outside in a t-shirt and you don't have to worry about dressing for the weather. You don't have to worry about scraping off your car, getting the snow off, the ice off. You don't have to worry about the roads and whether or not they're safe to drive on. And winters, they really open up a whole different slew of problems and challenges that we face. And that's why I think the holidays are so necessary, because December, is filled with Christmas. November is Thanksgiving. And, then we just have kind of a few more months to get through after those. But really in December, especially as a Catholic, like you feel this sense of great joy throughout the suffering of the winter months. Because like I said, I mean, the winter months are a struggle. They are very challenging, mentally, spiritually, and physically, because you're not outside moving as much, getting as much sun, and, just being out and about. And, when you run into December and it's time for Christmas, it's like, oh, thank God, like I needed something to help me get through these challenging months, because they are very, very challenging. And, that really brings me to something that the deacon was talking about today at Mass. Because the deacon had brought up a really unique perspective that I hadn't thought about in terms of New Year's resolutions. Because people are pretty emphatic about their New Year's resolutions. And, it makes sense. It's like the New Year's almost brings out these things within us that we've been thinking about for a long time, but have never implemented. We've thought about them for a long time of like, oh, like, I think if I worked out consistently, like I would feel a lot better. So like my New Year's resolution should be to go and work out more frequently. And oftentimes what happens, I mean, 95% of the times what happens with a New Year's resolution, we don't stick to them. We don't make these dramatic life changes. There's almost a no duh aspect to that. I'm drinking some coffee this morning. But yeah, there's like almost a no duh aspect to that, because it's like, do you really think that just because a new day is happening, that you're going to all of a sudden just start this new discipline? No, not a shot. You might be like, you might have the energy and the motivation to go for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, but most people are going to stop within the first week. And then a minority of people are going to stop in the second, the third. It's just going to kind of, it's going to have this trickle down effect where more people are just going to stop. And, especially throughout the winter months, like New Year's resolutions are, as emphatic and, exciting, because the winter months are such a challenge, and a New Year's resolution could be like, this is the one thing that I need to do to feel better throughout these months. And so that really ties into something deep about human behavior. It ties in really deep because it's so challenging to make dramatic changes to our lifestyle and our habits. And I can definitely attest to this because, it's hard for everyone. It's hard for all of us. When I was growing up, I experienced a lot of really negative and poor addictions. And, I tried to wean off of those addictions for so long. Because a New Year's resolution might be like, oh, I'm going to stop smoking, or I'm going to stop vaping, or I'm going to stop chewing, so on and so forth, right? I'm going to stop drinking. And so growing up, I was pretty addicted to a lot of those things. But now I don't do any of them. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't chew. I don't do any drugs. I'm like basically completely sober besides like coffee. The one thing that I have that's like a stimulant throughout the day is a cup of coffee. And my diet is completely different. All I eat is primarily meat. Um, and then I'll eat like eggs, onions, and garlic. And then usually all I have on my food is salt. And to spice it up, I will usually put like coconut butter and honey in my coffee. And that kind of satisfies my sweet tooth. Growing up, I ate a lot of sweets. Like I said, I had not only the alcohol and, the nicotine and things like that, but I was also very addicted to sweets and like cane sugar and, just very sugary things like ice cream and gelato and, I used to eat Tombstones and Subway and McDonald's and Arby's and Pop-Tarts and Cocoa Pebbles and Cocoa Puffs and all these different things. And then later in life, I started to feel like my body was wearing down. It was wearing down very fast. And, for example, I had like inflammation all the way up and down my spine. And this really brings up a unique topic because I ask a lot of people, because I'll tell people my story of, having all this inflammation and how I was able to overcome it essentially and be able to mitigate a lot of those symptoms. So I'll go and ask people, I'll be like, do you have like any pains or aches in your body? And they'll be like, no, not really. But I don't think that that's true a lot of the times. And the reason I don't think that that's true is because I don't know how often people are genuinely looking internally into themselves and like into their body and kind of checking in with themselves. I think a lot of the times our check-ins are limited to our checkups when we go to the doctor, and we just kind of rely on the doctor to make sure that our body's functioning properly. But, we'll notice these little aches and pains throughout the day. Maybe we'll kind of like stretch out and just kind of like try to work through them. Like right now, my middle back is really sore from working out. And so throughout the day, I'll kind of just like move it and, try to work it out a little bit. And that seems to kind of, produce an effect and make it feel a little bit better for a short amount of time. and essentially kind of get me through the soreness. But, we're so caught up, especially in American culture, with the busyness of our day and the busyness of our minds that we often neglect the needs of our body and also the needs of our spirit. And so this ties in to everything that we've talked about so far in this video. Because often we'll think, oh, like work is so much more important than going to mass. Or that little pain, that little ache that I feel in my body, that's just wear and tear. That's normal. Like I felt that my whole life. Like that's just how things are. That's just how my body is. There's nothing that I can really do about it. It's just a normal function of life. And, while that might be somewhat true for people, I refuse to accept that. And, it's funny because I started running a few years ago, and I was doing like kind of longer distance runs. I started with like a mile, and then I worked my way up to 2 miles, and then eventually 4 miles, eventually 5 miles. And then I ran like a 10 miler one time, and that was all really exciting and fun, especially to get to 10 miles, because I thought that would be impossible. Because when I started running, usually when I start a hobby or start something new, I want to learn from the best of the best. And I want to kind of start immersing myself into that environment. So when I started running, I started following all these YouTubers and content creators who were running and who were having great success with their runs. And, on the last video, we talked about how to find a good mentor. And that's a really great way to find a mentor and to get into something. Let's say you want to get good at something. A really great way to do that is to start making it a part of your everyday routine. So let's say you go on to YouTube and you watch YouTube Shorts, and that's just kind of a part of your day. What you can do is you can go and follow content creators if you want to get into running, or if you want to get into business, or if you want to get into whatever you want to get into. You go on and go on to YouTube, and you find some people who are having success with those things. And then while you're going through your regular short routine, you kind of get injected with some wisdom from those people, or some lessons that they learned, or some little tips that they have in terms of like, here's what gear you should be wearing, here's what to consider when you're doing a long run. Like make sure that you are fueled properly, because when you run for these long distances, it eats up all of your glycogen. And in order to be able to feel good and have a really successful run, like you should fuel your body with the proper nutrients. And so then you start to pick up on little things like that just as a result of kind of like, you're basically hanging out with these people. You're getting little glimpses and nuggets into how they approach their hobbies and how they live their life. And so that's a really big thing. But so I got into running, and while I was like going out on my runs, I was just kind of going at it. And when you get into running, you're kind of bare knuckling it, and you're just trying to get through the first few runs. And what I realized when I was running was I had all these aches and all these different pains in my body. And what that made me realize, though, is that running and jogging are a great way to check in with your body and see how it's actually performing. How is it actually doing? So like when I started running, right, like, oh my gosh, like my mind was just like, dude, let's just go home. Like this sucks. Let's get out of here now. I'm uncomfortable. This is not cool. We should not be doing this. Period. Let's go. And it was just like on that line of thought the whole time. And a lot of people experience that as well, when they start running. And not only that, you got the mind running, and then you also have the body inflamed. You know, your back hurts, your lower back hurts, your legs just feel like jello because you haven't used your body in that capacity in a very long time and it's not used to this. It's not trained for this. And basically, what I think running kind of shows us, especially in today's world, is where our bodies and our minds and also our spirit is at, surprisingly. Because as I continued to kind of keep running, I kind of started to orient my life towards having a successful run. Just a successful run. Like, because when I was running and kind of going, you know, a couple of miles at the beginning, I was like, oh, this sucks so bad, but, you know, if I didn't have this pain, if I didn't have these thoughts, if I didn't have this, like, lack of determination and faith, like, running out in the country would be really nice. Like, it's so beautiful out here, but I can't really enjoy it because, you know, I just have all this stuff going on that's distracting me from the true beauty of what I was experiencing. Because I could kind of get a glimpse of it, but it wasn't fully there. But I knew that if I could get this pain to stop, if I could get these thoughts to kind of chill out a little bit, and if I could get my spirit right, that running out in the countryside would be absolutely beautiful. And so anyways, what I did to work through some of this pain was I started to incorporate a full body workout. The reason that I did this is really important, and I think it's important for everyone to consider. Especially because the fitness industry right now is so advertising towards like people who are extremely buff and who want to get shredded and who want to do dirty bulks and eat 10,000 calories and just get massive and huge. And, you know, it's so, you know, there's a very idealistic image of both a man and a woman in traditional fitness culture. And what I'm here to argue is that it doesn't have to be like that, number one. Like, you don't have to be chasing this extreme version of a body, number one. And then secondly, we should be trying to figure out like how can we, because what I was trying to do with my running and with my exercising, I was trying to orient my exercising around having a successful run. And I might have learned this a little bit earlier on in life if I took sports more seriously, because, you know, if you're in high school and you're playing basketball and, you know, you're also going to the weight room, like, you would be really smart to, you know, focus on like speed drills and explosiveness, you know, maybe doing like really explosive squats and really explosive deadlifts. You know, even if you're not focused on like doing really heavy weights, like focusing on that explosion aspect of lifting weights for basketball would be really good, because in basketball you have to make all these really kind of explosive and fast movements. And so if you oriented your workouts around being able to do that more efficiently, then you might become a better basketball player as a result of your exercise routine, which is powerful. Because not only are you practicing the fundamentals of basketball, shooting and dribbling and defending, but you're getting stronger and you're making your body more appropriate for those situations. And so the problem with the fitness industry is that the influencers within the fitness industry, their life is working out. Their life is oriented towards creating this extreme version of a body that only like 1% of people are ever going to obtain. And so that is what their life is directed towards. So in a lot of ways, like, I agree with what they're doing. I think what they're doing is, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, the steroid use and the drug abuse and the dirty bulks and unhealthy diets. Like, I think there could be some work there. And being super obsessed with the body, I'm just not sure how healthy that is. But so when I started running, I followed a similar philosophy of like, okay, I'm gonna like that person who was working out to make their basketball game better. I was gonna work out to make my runs better. And to my surprise, when I started to incorporate a full body workout where I literally worked every muscle in my body, all the way from my toes and my feet, which are actually a lot more important than most people think or realize, all the way up to my face. I'll even do like facial workouts. And this might sound absolutely crazy, but, and you look crazy while you do it, but the basic philosophy is like, if you don't use it, you lose it. Like all of us have heard that saying before. But I don't know how many people have realized what that actually means. Right? Because people get like later in life, like I'll see like some older people who are, maybe experiencing some arthritis in their wrists, or, their feet are getting like really hard, um, and they're not soft anymore. They're kind of turning into rocks. And, I'll see that and I'll be like, well, how much are you moving? How much have you been like exercising your feet? Like, how much have you been exercising your hands? And what's really interesting is like, I can, like, because I do a hand workout as well. Um, and it's really just kind of cool to see how the entire body can develop. Not just like these primary muscle groups that we focus on, like chest and shoulders and biceps and triceps, but your face and your facial structure can change just by doing some workouts, because fundamentally your face is composed of a muscular structure, a lot of muscles actually. And it's the same thing with your feet, it's the same thing with your hands. And so when I incorporated this in this full body workout, my pain went away. Not only like my like muscle soreness, but my joint pain. I was experiencing like knee pain and ankle pain on my runs as well. And all of it was just disappearing. It was going away. And, when you're kind of in the middle of it, you're kind of like, oh, this is really nice. Now I can run without any pain in my body, and I can actually like go out and run in nature and like just kind of focus on my breathing. That's something that interesting that happens too. Is like once your pain starts to go away. Whoa! Where am I? Sorry, I just scared my dogs. I just woke up underneath my desk to tell you, hey, if you're enjoying this video and you want some more content just like it, I actually have a free Facebook group that you can go and join and engage with a bunch of people who are like you, who are interested in similar topics, and you can get more content from me if that's something you're interested in. So go down to the link in the description and you will find the Facebook group. You get to start to focus on other things because you're not focused on, oh, I feel terrible. Instead, you're focused on like, okay, like what else can I do? Because I'm just running now. And yeah, this is great to look at all the views and everything, but like, what else can I do? And I started to focus on breathing through my nose while running. And it turns out that's an amazing thing to do. Because your nose, it actually serves a really big purpose. Like it has several different functions, of which I only know like a few. which is like to purify the air coming in. You have these hairs in your nose, and you have this mucosa, and when you breathe in the air, these hair particles and the mucus, they capture, things like dust and other pollutants, and it prevents them from going into your lungs and into your body, which is amazing in itself because, I mean, imagine not having that and just having, so many different pollutants just going directly into your lungs. Guarantee our lifespan would be a lot shorter. So there's that aspect of it. And then your nose, and it's like the size of your fist. Your whole nasal structure is like the size of your fist. Well, my fist is a little larger, I think, but like it's like the size of a cue ball. And it's this whole structure in the face that, not only filters out things, but it also conditions the air that's coming in, making it more readily available for your lungs to be able to actually take the air and to be able to process it. It also humidifies the air or dehumidifies the air. So if you're in like 80% humidity, it'll take that in and it'll dehumidify it so it's not too humid, or it'll humidify it for you and just kind of get the ideal humidity range for your lungs to actually take in that air. And so it serves this whole purpose. And there's actually this really great book that's all about nasal breathing and the effects that mouth breathing can have on people. And it's actually really, really negative. And so it's so common for people to resort to mouth breathing when they're running because, I mean, they get so out of breath, right? And they're just like, but when you're mouth breathing, you're not getting all of those advantages of breathing through your nose. And so I actually kind of started to optimize my running workouts with my ability to breathe well through my nose throughout those workouts. So like doing like a zone 5 run. And you can see I've gotten really educated on the act of running. And, that's a result of just kind of immersing myself into this environment that was completely focused on optimizing running. So I got really good at it. I mean, I'm not like top 1% or anything like that, but like, for example, I probably hadn't ran for like a month and a half. And then I went back to the gym a couple of days ago and I was able to knock out a 4-mile run. And usually, my body, like if I had stopped running for a while and I would go just try to like run a mile, oh man, I remember how terrible those runs used to be. You're just like scratching and clawing your way through this run, trying to make it through. But no, like I was just like, when I run now, I'm basically just kind of going, breathing through my nose. I'm not like, or I'm not even like, I'm just like relaxing and breathing and running. It's very strange. It's a very strange experience. But I was able to resolve all the pain. And while you're going through it, you're kind of like, okay, well, this is just a new normal. But then you realize, like, well, how many other people are struggling with these types of aches and pains that could benefit from, not only doing the running, maybe not as a consistent thing, but as a kind of a thermometer check to see like, okay, how is your body performing? So like one challenge that I have for you would be to go out. Doesn't even have to be a mile. You could go for like half a mile, quarter of a mile, and just pay attention to your body. That's a really great way to check in with your body. So if you go out and you're running you don't have to go do a fast pace. Like something that I've learned through running is like zone 5 cardio is like some of the best cardio. And, one of the huge advantages of zone 5 cardio is lowering your heart rate and, getting that heart rate down and really kind of working your cardiovascular system so that your blood or your life force is a little bit more optimized. And so go out, do a run. Doesn't have to be a long run, but while you're running, I want you to pay attention to your body. Like, kind of work through the discomfort and check in with yourself and see like, okay, like think to yourself like, okay, what's hurting right now? What feels achy or sore? Like what joints feel sore? What muscles feel sore? Where is it exactly that feels sore? And if it's in multiple places, like really kind of paying attention to where exactly it feels sore. And the reason you want to feel exactly where it feels sore is so that now you can go back and you can kind of design and engineer a workout program that will basically strengthen that area of your body. And so let's say that your like middle back is hurting. Well, what the heck do you do to work out your middle back? Well, it turns out that you don't even need any weights, okay? You don't need any weights. All you do is kind of lean your body forward like this, your torso forward, okay? And then you're going to take your hands like this, and you're going to do like this Y pattern. You're going to go up, up, down, and you're just going to focus on really tightly contracting this area of your back. And that'll get you a good workout to strengthen that area of your body. And then you can start incorporating weights and, really strengthening that piece. But the beauty of the workout that I do is that it doesn't require any weights at all. And that I can do it anywhere at any time. It doesn't have any additional requirements. I can start adding weights if I want to, and I have done that, and it actually works really well. But I don't have to. If I'm on vacation and I'm at an Airbnb or something, like I can just do the workout routine. I don't need anything. And so yeah, when you're going out and you're doing your run, identify that area that's been bothering you probably for a long time, and then you can start to go and figure out how can I strengthen that specific area, and then sticking to it. But, that's one of the biggest problems is like, how do we stick to something? How do we stick to something? And I think that the answer to that is very complex, but it's also very straightforward. And really what happens is we've created an identity over time that we don't stick to things, that we don't do things, routinely. And that lack of commitment has kind of become a part of who we are. And so in order to kind of start to change that, it's really hard. It's very challenging because, if you think about it, no matter how old you are, let's say you're 26 like me. So I'm going to pull up my calculator here. So I'm 26 years old. I'm going to multiply that by 365. So I've been alive for 9,490 days. And let's say I've spent 95% of those days, like exuding behaviors of lack of commitment. So that means I've spent 9,015 days not committing to something. Now, if I start wanting to change, I have all of that past history, those 9,015 days to contend with when I start. So not only do you have the challenge of doing the thing, but you have the really deeply ingrained habits and behaviors that you've gained over the span of 9,000 days. Because here's the thing. Let's just say hypothetically you stuck with that thing for 100 days. Well, if you stick for something for 100 days, like your body is going to start naturally craving those things. It craves that structure, and you've given it structure over the span of 9,000 days. And at the beginning, when you try to change that structure, it's like, no, let's go back. No, we're not doing this. Like, we have a good routine going. Let's just stick with it. And so it'll kind of battle you in that sense. And so what we have to do is just kind of work through the muck. Work through the muck of what it is to be human. And humans are perfectly imperfect and imbalanced, and we're creatures of habit. And it's really hard for us to develop new habits, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. And it is achievable for anyone. But what we got to think about is like, how is it achievable? How is it possible? And so, yeah, if you stick to something for 100 days, it's going to start to kind of become a part of your identity. It'll be harder to stop doing the thing at 100 days than it'll be to stop doing that thing at day one. It'd be super easy to stop doing it day one because your body's like, yeah, let's get out of here. You're right. Let's go. But when you're at day 100, you'll be like, dude, we've been doing this for 100 days. Like, let's keep going. Let's keep going. And so your body will kind of start working with you. The one thing that might stop working with you is your mind. And, your mind and your feelings and your emotions all kind of create this cocktail of like, oh, let's stop. But your body's like, oh, I'm used to doing this. Let's go. And yeah. So, that really ties into New Year's resolutions. Because, these things might be good things that we should be doing. We might want to be eating healthier. We might want to be working out more consistently. Like, it might be an actual good thing for us. And so when we're thinking about our New Year's resolutions, I think we should start taking this new perspective on them of like, yeah, that would be good. But how do I come up with a plan so that I don't fail? Not expecting not to fail, because you're going to fail. You're human. But like, okay, so, maybe I'll go once a week. Maybe I'll go once a week, and then, I'll create this mental routine for when I'm feeling like not going. I'll create this mental routine because I know that there's going to be this moment before I actually go and do the thing. So what if I designed a plan for when that moment arises so that I can actually work through that moment and end up taking action? That's a really smart idea. So when you're, getting to the point before your workout where you're like, I don't want to go today. Like, I don't want to do this. Maybe you could develop like some line of questioning for yourself that would motivate you and kind of pull you out of that way of thinking that you're experiencing. Like, for example, you could ask yourself, like, well, what would happen if I didn't go? And the answer to that might be, well, I'd feel pretty shameful because, I set out to do this thing. And, if I just keep breaking commitments to myself over and over again, like, what does that say about me? What does that say about my character? It says that I'm not really committed, that I'm not willing to put in the work, that I'm not willing to deny my own flesh for the betterment of my mind, body, and spirit. And so you can ask yourself questions like that, where inevitably you'll come up with the conclusion like, okay, yeah, that's completely right. I'm just going to get in my car and go. And so having a plan put into place for those moments where you don't feel like doing it. And then also realizing that if you fail, like, just give yourself some grace. A lot of the times people have learned their response and behavior towards failure based upon what they saw growing up. So when their parents failed, or when their aunts and uncles failed, or their grandparents failed, or their friends failed, they'll learn from observing the behavior and their reaction to failure. And so likely what you have going on in your head is you have 15 to 20 different voices that you've learned over time, and that your brain has been programmed to respond to failure in that way that you observed. Because humans, we have something called mirror neurons. And basically what we'll do is we'll observe behavior very closely. And then if it's something where we're like, if it's someone like that's leading us or is in a place of authority in our brain and in our mind, then we'll mirror that person's behavior. And not only the behavior, but we kind of download their mindset to go along with it. And so over time, you've accumulated these behaviors and these mindsets by observing other people and downloading basically their behavior, and with it, the mindset that goes with the behavior. And so when you're responding to failure, like let's say you wanted to go and work out, but you didn't do it. And so naturally, you're going to respond maybe like your dad did, or maybe like your mom did, or maybe like another person close in your life responded to failure. And maybe they responded to failure by just kind of, I'm just going to ignore that. I'm not even going to think about it. Or maybe they respond to failure with, it's the weather's fault. It's too cold out. There's nothing I can do. It's too cold out. Maybe they blame someone else. Maybe they're like, they just like aren't in a good position right now. Like, I should really just like be there for them. It's kind of their fault. Like, they kind of got in the way. It's their fault. And so their response to failure is this like immediate numbing by, taking this problem that they're going through, which is, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Now, how am I going to respond? Well, a lot of people respond by saying, oh, it's not my fault. It's not my responsibility. It's not my accountability. No, it's the world's fault. And so what that shows you fundamentally, just by going through that exercise right now, what that shows you is that when you place the blame and the responsibility on something external, whether it be the weather, the traffic conditions, etc., what you do is you give all of your power that you had away because you can't control the weather. You can't control traffic. You can't control other people. What you can control is your behavior. And you might even be able to argue that you can't really control it 100%, which would be kind of true because we have all these instilled habits and behaviors that our body kind of just wants us to do those things. So it kind of controls us in a way and kind of puppeteers us in a way. But we do have influence and somewhat control over our own behavior. And so if you learn the failure response that, oh, I just need to numb this, or I need to blame something else, or maybe I'll just lie to myself. Maybe I'll just lie to myself. Maybe I'll say, oh, this doesn't matter to me actually. I don't really care. That's a big one. I don't really care. It's not a big deal, Who cares? Who cares? Who cares if I miss the gym today? Who cares? Nobody cares. I'm just going to not go and the world's going to be the same. So there's this justification process that your brain goes through when you're thinking about, whether or not to go to the gym. And yeah, it's really crazy, man, because in America, we treat failure with such a poor response, because a lot of us do that, where we point the blame externally, or we try to numb ourselves and forget about the thing in the first place. And that takes our power away. We don't realize it, but that takes our power away. And this was a lesson that I learned from a couple of my mentors, that it's very important to take extreme ownership of your life. And so ownership, like what does that mean? Well, when you own something, you have a responsibility to now take care of that thing. It's your responsibility. And so when it's your responsibility, you can either do really well at taking responsibility for that thing, or you can do really poorly. And what I've come to learn is that the more responsibility that I take on, and the more responsibility that I take seriously, the more fulfilled that I actually feel. Because taking responsibility gives you a sense of meaning and purpose. Because it's no longer about you, me. It's now about the things that we're responsible for. But the problem is, when you take responsibility, there is a risk that something is going to go wrong, okay? So, and that's very linked to failure. And so we have a really poor response when it comes to doing something wrong. Because there's a really good response to that, and then there's a really poor response to that. And some of us have never even learned what a good response to that would be, right? We never learned like an accountability framework. Like, how do we take accountability? Like, what does that even really mean? What is that specifically? Like, I've heard the word before. I've heard accountability. I've heard responsibility. But why do they matter? What does that even mean? Take responsibility, take accountability. What? Like, yeah, I know what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. But it doesn't really make its way in. And the reason it doesn't make its way in is because we don't know what it means. We don't know what it really means, a lot of us. And so accountability, like a good response to something, a failure that happened, something negative that happened, an outcome that you didn't expect, is, okay, well, I know that I played a role in that, for sure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take ownership of my part in that. And I'm gonna if someone else was involved, I'm gonna apologize to that person and let them know, hey, like, I feel pretty bad. I feel ashamed because of how poorly I performed in that situation. And, it's really getting to me. It's really like I just don't feel good about it. And you know what? Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what happened. Okay, so there's that part, right? There's repentance. There's apologizing. There's addressing the issue at hand. And just kind of being honest about your shortcomings as a person. Because we all have them, right? Okay, so you got the repentance aspect. And now you have sort of this penance. You're like, what are you going to do about this? Are you just going to keep making the same mistake over and over again and not really taking any action or doing anything to try to make up for it or try to overcome this behavior that you're not satisfied with? Oh, I don't think that that's a good response. What I think would be a good response would be to, hey, I'm really sorry about this. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm doing is even better. Here's what I'm doing to make sure that I don't make this mistake again, right? So you could like let's say you missed a time commitment, like you were going to be to a event, and you were supposed to be there at 7 o'clock, but you got there at 8, and you just feel terrible about this. Like, oh, I know this event. Let's say it was for one of your friends that means a lot to you. Then you're an hour late, and you just feel terrible because you wanted to be there to support your friend, but you just messed up. Like maybe you took too long of a nap and you woke up and you're like, oh my gosh, like I gotta get there. And you're an hour late. And so now you're like, okay, well, what can I do to avoid this in the future? And it's like, yeah, man, I'm really sorry. What I'm gonna do is I'm just not gonna take naps before events anymore. I'm just gonna stay awake, and you know, I just don't want this ever to happen again. And then you go and you try to do the thing, right? But the thing is like sometimes we fail to do the thing. And so what do you do after that? Where it's like, okay, I said I was going to stop taking naps before events, but I did it again. Same framework. Dude, oh, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so frustrated with myself. I'm so angry with myself because I said I wasn't going to do this and I did it again. And so what you're doing is you're going through a genuflection of how you actually feel about your shortcoming, about your sin. And so that's kind of what confession is about, really. It's going through that process of genuflecting about your shortcomings and realizing how frustrating the nature of sin really is. Because the truth is we're all sinners, and we don't go a day without sinning. But what do we do about it? Do we just like numb ourselves from the fact that we're sinning and just continue to sin? Or do we strive towards something better? And what I'm arguing is that we should strive towards something better. And then I think that we'll be more fulfilled with our lives if we strive towards something better. And so the point, and that might make you think like, okay, virtues, right? Like virtues, like accountability, responsibility, ownership. Those things are virtues. Those things are virtues. And the reason that they're virtues is because they are inherently good. Like we know that these things are good. They're good for us. They're good for our spirit. They nurture our spirit. They bring us closer to something like holiness. Something like what Jesus demonstrated throughout his lifetime was he lived a life of virtue, of perfect virtue. And so we can look at Jesus' life and we can see examples of when he demonstrated virtue. And guess what? Just like with those mirror neurons that we use to learn the behavior of how to respond to failure when we were growing up, we can tap into those mirror neurons and we can start to mirror the behavior of someone like, Jesus would be the best example. But, there might be someone in your community who you look up to, who you aspire to be like. And what you can do is you can observe that person and mirror their behavior. And this is especially why it's important for us to surround ourselves with people who exude the behavior that we want to exude. If we want to be more accountable, we should look for other people who take accountability. Because when we spend time with people, no matter what, we're going to be observing them. We're going to be, hey, it's me again. I just wanted to tell you something very, very important. I have a coaching program that teaches you all about this stuff and how to become a better version of you. And so if that sounds like something that you're interested in, click the link down below. You can book a call with me. There's no sales gimmicks, anything like that. It's just a personal one-on-one call, and we'll figure out and see if the program's a good fit for you. If not, you might just get some free resources, free value, and a chance to come hang out with me. And yeah, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure to click the link down below, book a call with me, and I will talk to you then. Be taking in information about them and processing it. And a lot of times, it'll subconsciously start to build up in our mind, and we just start mirroring their behavior, and we don't even really realize it. It's completely subconscious. It's just something that we do. So, when you surround yourself with people who maybe strive towards virtue, obviously they're not perfect. No one is. But you notice like, hey, I noticed you did that thing and it was really good. And I noticed that you actually do that pretty consistently. And I think that that's really good. I think I want to be more like that. And so what you do is you start hanging out with that person. And you find even more people who are like that and who inspire you. And maybe you start watching TV shows that contain characters that strive towards that. And maybe you start listening to music that, that where the artist actually writes songs about that thing. And maybe you make it just like your whole life. Maybe you just kind of swap everything around, including, all the things that you do throughout the day. Maybe you watch a podcast in the morning. Maybe you watch a movie at night. And so what you can do is you can kind of start swapping those things out. And for example, let's say you want to, be more accountable. What you could do is Google movies about accountability, or books about accountability, or podcasts about accountability. And then take your regular daily routine and just swap it. If you're watching like a comedian podcast in the morning, swap it with that podcast you just found on Google. Swap that movie with that movie you just found on Google. Look up songs about accountability. Swap out your playlists with songs about accountability. What that's going to do is all the inputs now going into your brain are going to be revolving around this virtue of accountability. And it's going to start shifting your behavior. And so when we're looking at our New Year's resolutions as well, part of that plan where we're like, okay, when I'm starting to have thoughts about not going to the gym or basically not committing to what I said I was going to do, well, not only can you come up with a mental routine to get yourself over that hump and create a series of questions that will ultimately lead you to the conclusion of like, okay, I gotta go. Not only can you do that, but you could also start surrounding yourself with people who do go to the gym. The luxury of living in the online world today is that we don't even have to meet new people. If you're struggling to meet new people, then you could just go online. You can watch YouTube videos. You can watch documentaries about people who go to the gym consistently. And, through that process, you can start to mirror their behavior. And it'll make it 10 times easier for you to want to do the same thing. Because you're like, I want to be like that. I want to be like that person. And yeah, so when you're thinking about coming up with a New Year's resolution or just a change in your life that you want to stick, it's going to take more than, oh, I'm just going to start going. And maybe if I just start going, I'll just keep going. It's not how it works, unfortunately. I wish it was. That'd be fantastic if we could just start doing something and then we're off to the races, but it's not how it works. So what I'm proposing is that in order for us to create the change that we want to create in our life, we have to start shaping our identity to propel us into that new person. We start laying the groundwork for the person who sticks to their commitments, who takes accountability, who takes responsibility, who takes ownership, who is honest. We start to mold those foundations and put it into something like a code of honor. Something like, here's the virtues that I want to strive towards and the virtues I want to be more like. Here they are written down. Here's what they mean. And here's how I can actually do those things. And that by doing those things over and over again, you might start to build something of a relationship with yourself where you're like, oh, I'm actually capable of doing these things. Not only am I capable of doing these things, but when I do them, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty fulfilled with myself. I feel this sense of duty and purpose that I didn't really feel before. And so yeah, that is really the starting framework of starting to shift your identity. And then recognizing that there's all these things battling against you. Like, for example, let's say you want to go to the gym and you're listening to music about, someone who's doing drugs and like eating chips on the couch all day and, just talking about lust and immodesty and, guns and violence. If you're listening to that, is that going to be conducive to your plan to start going to the gym? It might be, but I doubt it, Or, if you're watching content on YouTube and, it's someone who isn't disciplined or isn't committed, or if you're watching movies and, they're not really about someone who is trying to strive towards virtue, someone who's committed, maybe it's someone who's lying to themselves as the character. And is that really conducive to your plan? Not really. And so you have all these things that are layered on throughout your day that are actually not conducive to your plan. And so we start to lay the framework for what your target is, what your actual plan is. Because it's not about what you're doing, it's about who you want to become, right? You want to become disciplined. You want to become committed. You want to become someone who takes accountability. You want to become someone who's honest. You want to become someone who strives towards virtue. But how do you do that? Well, first you got to know what you're even shooting at. It's like someone who's shooting a bow. If you don't have this list of virtues that you want to strive towards. It'd be like shooting a bow and not having a target. You're just kind of and hoping it sticks, but it's not going to stick. So then creating this list of virtues, what they mean, and some examples of them. Ooh, and if you want to get really in line with the virtue, what you can do is you can have a story, something that means a lot to you, something that you saw that stood out to you, where you were like, oh, yes, like that's what I want to be more like. And maybe it was in a book you read, or maybe you were out in the community and you saw someone do something and you were like, wow, like that was really cool. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log that. I got my virtues and values that I'm trying to strive towards, and I got their meaning, I got some examples, but now I have something really powerful. I have an example in real life that moved me emotionally, that I felt, wow, that was really cool. That was really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that out, and I'm going to log that with my virtue, and now I have more meaning ascribed to that virtue. And you do that enough times, over and over and over again, you'll get this web of meaning associated with these virtues. And what is that going to do? Well, whenever you go out into the world, you're just going to see things that, oh, there's an opportunity here to be more charitable. Oh, there's an opportunity here to take accountability. Oh, there's an opportunity here to demonstrate honesty and maybe really change how someone else views the world. Because by demonstrating virtue, we can actually influence others to be like the same thing that happened with you, of where you were out in the community and you saw something, you're like, oh my gosh, like that's different. That's unique. I've never seen that, but that's good. That's actually really good. And maybe your initial reaction is even like, ugh, like you're kind of disgusted a little bit. You're like, that was like repulsive. Like, what did I just, but over time you think about it and you're like, well, that person was just being honest with me. Oh, they were just being direct with me. Oh, they were just like saying, oh, they actually value accountability. One of the things that's so crazy in American culture is how, especially in the digital online space, it's so commonplace to show up late to meetings, where people just are okay with showing up 45 minutes late to a meeting, and that's just normal. And so there was this one guy who I was going to this meeting. I had a meeting with someone about a potential opportunity to help them with something. And, I had gone throughout the day, and I actually spent like an hour or two preparing for the meeting. Not only that, I showed up 5 minutes early to the meeting. And so I got to the meeting, and I'm just kind of sitting there waiting. I'm like, okay, I'm expecting this person to be like 5 minutes late because that's just normal. And the guy no-showed. He no-showed. And then I sent him a message. Well, he sent me a message, and he was like, I got this excuse. Like, I'm not going to be able to make it. Didn't take any ownership, really. Didn't take any accountability. And my response to him was probably something he would have never expected. And it probably took him for a little bit of a walk in his mind, and he might have thought it was repulsive, because I was like, dude, gosh, what did I say? It was something along the lines of like, man, I'm pretty disappointed, to be honest with you, that you didn't show up for our meeting. I had taken a lot of time to prepare for this, and I was really looking forward to speaking with you. And, if this is the way that you actually go about your your business, like if you don't really prioritize showing up to things that you say you're going to show up to, I don't really think that we're a good fit to work together, because I really value this thing. I really value showing up on time and keeping your commitments. And yeah, I just don't think we'd be a good fit to work together if this is how you really go about your business. And so I kind of left the door open for him to be like, oh, dude, this is so not common for me. Like, I usually show up to everything that I say I'm going to show up to, but, I had this one thing where it was like an emergency, like where it was a really high priority, and I had to attend to it. I left the door open for him to kind of have a rebuttal, but he just looked at the message and he didn't respond. And, I don't really take any offense to that. The reason that I don't take any offense to that, and not to say that wouldn't impact our relationship, but like personally, like I just know who I am. I know what my values are. I know what I'm striving towards. And so when other people aren't striving towards the same thing, it's like, fine, dude. Like I don't expect you to uphold the same things that I uphold. Like if you're not going to, I'm better off, you're better off not responding to me. Because like I don't really want to surround myself with you. If that's how you're going to behave, if that's not how you go about your business and your ventures. And so he's better off not responding to me instead of like maybe saying like a lie. Like something like, oh man, like I had this really important thing when maybe it wasn't really that important at all. And it was just kind of normal, like a medium priority. And he lied to me. Like, and then I would have to kind of discern out over the next couple of weeks, like, was this guy lying to me or was he being truthful? And then you can really kind of see things pretty quickly. If someone is saying like small little lies to you, the likelihood that they're going to lie to you about other things is very high. It's very high because lying is like a habitual thing. Lying is a learned behavior. And basically what people learn is that they can lie in order to conceal the truth, and that they think that by concealing the truth, it's going to save them from something. It's going to save them from taking accountability or having an uncomfortable conversation, so on and so forth. And so they lie. They lie because they associate it with a positive reward. It's like, okay, I lied. I learned that I did this little white lie, and I got to avoid a very difficult conversation. And so they learn that, and now they're like, okay, lying is good. Lying is good because it helps me. It allows me to avoid things that I don't want to confront. And so you can really pinpoint people's character pretty quickly, actually. And that's something that I think that we're not very good at as a country, is analyzing, observing people's behavior and kind of mapping that and determining like who they actually are, like what characteristic traits that they actually are demonstrating. Because if we were really good at that, we would be able to spot things really fast. I think our divorce rates would plummet because we would be able to see in this person like, oh, you're a liar. Oh, you lie. That's what you do. That's what you're doing. And I think a lot of people will lie to themselves about their lying. They'll be like, oh, like, no, they weren't lying. And I got this really good piece of advice from a mentor as well, is trust but verify. And a lot of people just kind of offer out trust. They're like, you take my trust, you take my trust, you take my trust. And they just kind of offer it out. What I would say is that Someone should actually build trust with you. We should act as if we're valuable, we're innately valuable, and that someone should earn my trust. My trust is a gift, and that you actually have to earn my trust. I'm not just going to give it to you. That's stupid. Why would I just give you my trust? You have to earn it. And that actually gives someone, the other person, like, this is the standard. You're going to earn my trust. I'm not just going to give it to you. And so when you got this person who, like, you're talking to and you notice these little lies, you're like, why are they lying? Why are they lying? Has no one ever told them, like, dude, why are you lying to me? Has someone never like asked them that? Because the thing is, within our culture, so many people are getting away with lying and no one's being called out for it, that it's just normal. It's just common. Everybody just lies. It's fine. Little white lies. No big deal. No big deal at all. It's a big deal. It's a huge deal. Because that means that we're not striving. The reason that it's a huge deal is because it means that we're not striving towards something like honesty, something like decency, something like accountability, something virtuous. It's actually the opposite of virtue, believe it or not. It's a vice. Lying is a vice. And so, in conclusion, partly, someone should have to earn our trust. And the thing is we're so down this downward spiral of lying that I think that we forgot how to earn trust. Because people have just been giving it out willy-nilly. Take my trust, have it. Versus a completely different framework, which is you have to earn my trust. I'm not going to just give it to you. Nope. And the way that you're going to earn my trust is by being honest with me. You're going to tell me the truth to the best of your ability. You know, no one's perfect. Maybe you lie. Maybe you lie once. But how do you respond to that lie? Do you just push it off to the side and just try to act like it never happened? You know what will really gain someone's trust? If you say, I lied. I lied to you. You know, the other day when we were talking and I said that I don't like hot dogs, I lied to you. Because the truth is, I love hot dogs. But the reason I told you I don't like hot dogs is because I wanted you to like me. I heard you say that you don't like hot dogs, and I'm like, I don't know, there was just this natural instinct in me to just be like, I don't either. So that's a very low risk example, but I guarantee if you tell someone, I lied to you about hot dogs, they're going to be like, oh, I can trust you with anything. If you're going to be honest with me about what you said about hot dogs, what else are you going to be honest with me about? You know, maybe it'll lead to more serious honesty of like, oh, like I told you, like I wanted to have 6 kids, but because you said that you wanted to have so many kids, and I got to be honest with you, I lied. I lied to you. I don't know if I want to have kids. I wanted to tell you that I wanted to have that many kids so you'd like me, so that, you know, we could continue connecting. But I lied. I'm sorry. Beautiful. Beautiful execution. You know what I mean? And so, like, that's how you earn trust. Another way that you earn trust is you treat your word as if it is powerful, because it is. It is extremely powerful. So, let's say you make a commitment. You tell someone, hey, I'm going to be there at 12:30. I'm going to be there at 12:30. And then you don't show up until 12:35. You just broke a commitment. You said you were going to be there at 12:30. Now it's 12:35. And you're late. So how do you respond to that? Do you just try to brush it off? Or you say, you know, I take my word very seriously. And, I just want to apologize to you and say, I'm sorry for being 5 minutes late. It's very uncharacteristic of me. I don't condone that behavior at all. I don't think it's acceptable. And so what I'm going to do moving forward is this, and this to try and make sure that I'm never late again. Accountability framework. And so that's a really big part of the New Year's resolutions, of making change in life. You actually have to change who you are. But the big question is, like, how do you do that? And you do that through a process of actually understanding what you are, who you are now, like what kind of behaviors and characteristics are you demonstrating now, okay, and then kind of auditing that, going through that, and then setting up, okay, here's who I want to become more like, and then here's specific actions that I can take to become more like this person, knowing you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to, be that person 100% of that time. So you're going to fall short. But if you make these micro adjustments over time, and then if you take small actions to become this person, over time, it's going to become a lot more normal and commonplace for you to exude those behaviors. Because just like you spent the 9,015 days becoming the person that you are now imagine if you spent 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 days becoming the person that you really want to be. And so it's not about the short-lasting transformation, the short-term transformation of like, oh, I need to become this person tomorrow. It's like, no, you should expand your horizon a little bit. You should expand out the time frame and the time scale in which you accomplish your goal. That's really easy to say for someone who's a little bit older and who has some more experience. It's really hard to say when you're like 16, 17 years old and you don't have that much life experience yet. But the concept still applies. So like if you started to think about, I'm 26 now, if you started to think about what you want to be like when you're 50 years old, that might be a really good thing because that gives you quite a bit of time to actually get there. Instead of being like, oh, I want to be a completely different person by next week. It's like, dude, no. Very slim chance, minuscule chance that will ever happen. Now, the grace of God is amazing, and He does some incredible things and incredible miracles, and He even transformed my life in a pretty radical way. I was like tossing and turning one night, and that's when I had my come to Jesus moment. And, I realized